Hello and welcome back to Ask an Agile Coach. My name's Andrea Fryrear. I'm the CEO and co-founder of AgileSherpas, and I am joined today by Ryann Greve, an Agile coach with an amazing background who is here to help with some burning questions about how to work better in various difficult situations. Ryann, thanks for being here. You want to introduce yourself, maybe tell us what you do when I'm not pulling you into random Zoom recordings to ask you questions?
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. My name is Ryann, and I am an Agile Transformation Consultant, Coach, and Trainer with AgileSherpas. I've been in the Agile realm for a few years before my time at AgileSherpas. That's kind of what drew me in to working for such a great group here at AgileSherpas, having stood up an Agile marketing practice at a healthcare system before I met my Sherpas here. But what I work on is, I work with a bunch of different clients in ranging from, wide scale Agile transformations to, smaller teams, coaching, more intimate settings. And, it's really been great to not only apply my marketing experience and empathy, to those change agents in marketing roles, marketing leaders, but then also to apply what I've learned as an Agilist to help them make that change in the way that they work, to not only find more efficiency, do more work of value, but also to really come back to, what led them to become marketers in the first place and enjoy their work again.
Mm-hmm. And it's so great to be able to bring those experiences together and save people a little bit of trouble by talking about what has worked and what you've seen not work.
Absolutely.
And so for me, before I was an Agile coach myself, when I was in marketing, I didn't really have access to a coach. Like that wasn't really a thing that was in my marketing universe. So I like to start this off by kind of asking the coaches that are joining me, why coaching? Why is this a thing that marketers in particular should embrace as part of a change initiative? Agile is just one flavor of change, but anytime you're changing, really, you could use some coaching. And so why coaching? Why do you think that this is an important piece of making things better?
Yeah. Well, as someone who has been a change agent in my past life as a marketer and somebody who implemented Agile on my own, essentially just by reading AgileSherpas content in particular, it's a lonely journey, right? And so I think it's important that when you are driving change or you are signing up to join that change, you really want to have someone with you to guide you, because change is very scary. You want to make sure that even though, Agile isn't about doing things right, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. There still is this feeling of, hey, I want to be able to move in the right direction and have that assurance that I'm thinking about this the right way, or I'm making this change and trying to anticipate how people will react. Can someone kind of help me be, ready for that, be a sounding board? And then there's also the actual knowledge of Agile values and principles that are very different from the more traditional way of working, where a coach can really help to remind and refine and deepen the marketer's understanding of how to apply those values and principles along the way. Because we all start, in the same spot where we're just learning about how agility can really help change for the better the way that marketing teams work and the value they add to the organization. And so you need that coach to kind of help you refine and deepen along the way so that the team becomes more confident, but then also can demonstrate the benefits and the value that they drive. And so that coach is really instrumental in helping them along that journey.
That's great. And you've worked with a lot of teams, you've seen a lot of stuff. So what's your favorite thing about being a coach?
Oh, there's so many things. We could do a couple of videos on this. I really love it when the team reaches that point of feeling like they're getting in their groove, where you just kind of see them, you see the collaboration, you see the improved communication, you see people, just digging in and getting it done. You see people get that satisfaction literally out of moving tasks across the board to done, right? And you when you see that light bulb, right, that proverbial light bulb go off in terms of, how they're working together and that rhythm that they're creating, and um the chemistry that the team has created for itself. And it's just so rewarding to see not only that in action, which is what we're all striving for, but knowing the journey that they've been on to get there. There will be people who will be skeptical at first. There'll be people who will be gung-ho and try and maybe frustrated that others aren't, on board or have that same level of enthusiasm. There may be questions about how do we do this, or doubts like this will never work. So it's really interesting to, be a part of that journey, but really rewarding when you see it all come together and really click, knowing, just what they've been, the path that they were on to get there. It's just incredibly satisfying.
Yeah. So then other side of that coin, what's the hardest thing about being a coach?
Oh, it's heartbreaking sometimes to see the effect of a negative culture and what that can do to people, especially people who have been with an organization for a long time. So kudos to the leadership for having that vision and recognizing that, hey, things need to get better. They should be better. These are smart, talented people. And we, in marketing, we're very often relegated to that role of being an order taker. And so you just see people's spirits just absolutely, I'm not being dramatic, just get crushed, and they're just on survival mode. And even though, we are guiding them in how to work in an agile way, change for the better, you still see the power of that negative culture weighing on these people, and they're fearful. They are, looking over their shoulder. They're even resistant, not in a hostile way, but you can see the fear. And, from a coaching standpoint, it takes not just words, but most importantly, actions to not only you as a coach to, build that trust, but also to, help the team to rally together. And so that person who may be going through that hard time of accepting or trusting, can really see, that, hey, this is real and this is actually good. And this isn't how I grew up in this organization, and be able to trust enough to take that leap. But yeah, it is heartbreaking to see that, we all know the phrase, right? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And, there is a reason why that agile change is taking place. But, there are definitely some people who, are affected by the cultures are coming from more negatively that, you, as a coach, you really want to hone in on and really try to demonstrate through empathy and through acts of gaining trust, to help that person, bring them along the way.
Yeah. And so, as I said before, I feel like a lot of people, especially in marketing, haven't been coached. This
Right.
isn't something that is often part of our experience, especially if we haven't worked in an agile environment before. So for somebody who's maybe entering into a coaching relationship for the first time, whether it's a team coach or one-on-one coaching, do you have any advice for how they might take the best advantage of access to a coach?
I think it's really just being open, right? No organization is perfect. People aren't perfect. That's what humanity is about, right? And so I think it's being open and transparent as to, where you think the opportunities are, where you think the room for growth is, some of the challenges, right, that the team is facing, because otherwise, it's going to be really difficult to go in and, try to implement agile and everything's fine. I mean, that's not, what the purpose is. And also, we will find out, right? We will see it. We have ways. No, we will see it. It just will present itself anyway. So, from the get-go, I think it's really important to take that leap and have that openness, because we're going to be open as coaches too. And we're going to tell the truth, and we're going to share, what we're seeing. And so I think from the start is really just to enter into that relationship with this openness and willingness to trust, because we are here to help. But at the same time, we know that, as leaders, we can appreciate the difficulty and the challenge that awaits you on this journey as well. So let's just partner up from the get-go.
Right. And it seems like, especially if people are in that fearful culture that you were talking about, this might require some bravery and some really kind of showing up and taking a risk for
It really
people
does.
to be open.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bravery, I think, is a great word. It's a bravery to not only decide to do this, to adopt this with this new way of working, because it's more than just, as we know, it's more than just the events, right? It's more than just a stand up. It goes much more deeper than that. And so I think, the empathetic leaders who are more change agent in their nature, they understand that. And it does take bravery to decide even to go on this journey, let alone, embark on it.
Yeah. Change is scary. It's always scary.
Very scary. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So we have a few questions, real questions from real folks struggling with their ways of working that we're gonna work through right now. So I'm gonna put on my imaginary struggle hat and ask these questions, and you and I will sort of work through what we might suggest for somebody going through these struggles. And our goal is always answer the specific questions in front of us where possible, but also thinking about the broader application, right, of some of the Agile best practices that we know of, so that if somebody has an adjacent problem, right, maybe this helps them as well. Cool. All right. So the person that has spoken up and asked for help recently is describing a situation that I think will feel familiar to a lot of people. Too many meetings, right? They spend their whole workday in meetings, ending up with maybe just an hour or two of productive time. And these are both internal and external meetings, right? So there's different levels of flexibility around that. So the meeting problem is one piece of the puzzle. And then in those few remaining moments of the ability to do real work, they have a lot of conflicting priorities. So they're not sure how to devote those few hours of productive time. And of course, they also don't have a good visualization. We don't have a backlog. We don't have a workflow. So we can't see, there's no source of truth, right, to be able to point to. So I think we've both heard those kinds of concerns from clients a lot of time. They're all showing up together in this particular instance. So what would you say to somebody sort of living in that reality?
Yeah, I definitely can relate. We see it all the time. I think when you feel overwhelmed, when you feel like, you are just, your time is being occupied by these meetings and you don't have that time to think, it's a feeling, right? It's just, you can't help but feel overwhelmed. You can't help but feel frustrated. And so I think the first thing that I would recommend is to try to step out of that emotion for a minute here and just take a look objectively and say, okay, I'm going to document how I'm spending my time. I'm going to take the next 2 weeks, right? Whatever it is, whatever you decide, to just document, where you're spending your time, and also start to document your work. Because I think that will help. Hopefully it will help take the emotion out of it a little bit, but then also provide you with some data for yourself. And eventually, if you have to make a case for it, then you have that for a later time with your leader or whoever, if you want to take it that far. But I think it's really about personally documenting and visualizing your work. And the documentation can be something as simple as a spreadsheet. The visualization can be something simple as sticky notes, on a board, or if you want to use Trello or something like that. There's so many tools out there to help you visualize, but that's very, very powerful because, not only does it validate what you're feeling, it provides you with, okay, I think I can see a roadmap starting here of the things that I need to shift. Like, obviously there's a problem. And so the visualization too will help you keep track of your work, and also, maybe think about your work in a different way. So it's not this laundry list, right? There's a lot of different tools that you can use to help sort through your work. So I'm thinking, I did this with my son the other day. He was feeling overwhelmed with his schoolwork. We did an Eisenhower matrix. We did an Eisenhower matrix. He's in 7th grade, but it works. And it just can really help you sort through, like, not everything is due right now. It may feel that way, but really, there are important and urgent things. Yes. Okay. So you prioritize that. But then other thing that's important, maybe it's not as urgent. Maybe it doesn't need to be done today, but let's, put it on the radar, and let's make sure that, we're thinking about it, but it's not something that needs to be done right now. And so it's a really great tool for yourself. But then also, if that's something you want to share with your manager too, if you need clarification and say, hey, this is my work and I've mapped it out, but hey, I may have a question or two here about this project. Is it really that, urgent, or is it something that we can, maybe table and, do more due diligence on, whatever it is. So it not only can be used for yourself, but also be a tool for conversations with people that hopefully can help you or be in a position to provide that clarity. And then from there, I think it's really taking a hard look at yourself and looking at, okay, well, what can I really get done? What is my capacity? What am I comfortable with accomplishing in a given day? And that's really your own personal work in progress limit, or your WIP limit, that you want to, assign yourself in a way, right? Where you're just like, okay, I understand what my priorities are. And now it's like, now let's get to work, but what can I really accomplish? Instead of feeling like, I have to do all of this stuff right now. This is giving yourself a little grace, but also with a lot of realism of, okay, this is what I can actually do. And so WIP limits are always a great way to kind of get that gut check for yourself as well. So those are a couple of steps that I would take out of the gate. There's more, obviously, but those are some good starting points, I hope.
Yeah. Can we double click into the Eisenhower prioritization? Just because that is such a nice, simple framework for just anybody can use that. You do have to know the full scope of what you could be doing, right? So you got to go through that step first. But once people have all their work out in the open, then how do we use the Eisenhower matrix? What's that look like?
Yeah, I think it's understanding, first of all, ideally you have an idea of not only what are strategic priorities for the organization, but then also understand the timing that you're up against as well, or what's being asked of you. And so I think, what we see a lot of from teams in particular is everybody wants to put it in that important and urgent box. But what it requires you to do is really take a hard look and say, is it really that urgent? Is it really that important? And I think that's where the guidance from a leader can also be, or your manager can also be helpful as well, to kind of pressure test it, so that you're really operating with like the full knowledge and the full context in order to prioritize. I don't want to say accurately, but appropriately. Because you want to have some knowledge of where the organization is going, your role in it, and use that context to help you prioritize based on, again, very simply, that importance and urgency. It's not very complicated, but there is a story behind every piece of work. You want to make sure that you understand that before you say, okay, I feel comfortable, placing it in this box versus that box. And so I think that's really going to be important for you to just maybe take a couple of swings at it, have a couple of conversations as well to get it to a place where you feel really comfortable, and have that support too of either a boss or a coworker, that you're working closely with, to understand this is how I'm approaching this based on my understanding of the timing and the strategic importance as well. So there could be some benefit there at the end too.
Absolutely. So then I do also want to circle back to one other thing that you mentioned, the WIP limit idea, which is this other really simple thing that you can do. It's Doesn't seem like it should make as much of a difference as it does, but it's so amazing when you get it right. So once you've got your work on that matrix, let's say, and you say, okay, I'm going to focus only on the really important quadrants, there's probably still a lot of work in there. So we've got to work through it in the right way. And WIP limits are good for that.
Yeah, they're wonderful. So, once you've identified your priorities, right? And so you then need to figure out, okay, how much work can I actively work on? And what is that limit that I feel comfortable with, right? But then also looking at the individual pieces of work and going, okay, does this need to be broken down even further, right? Because it's a campaign, right? For, let's say you're working in healthcare, it's a service line that you're promoting. It's a campaign. Oh, there are so many different parts and pieces to that, right? So you want to make sure that you're breaking down the tasks as well, so that you're really being honest about what goes into it, as well as what you can really do in order to have as accurate of an appropriate WIP limit as possible for yourself. And so that really requires you then to really hone in and focus on, what is that work that you're committing to doing and what you're going to commit to complete in a shorter time frame. And so there's really, like I said, it's really a great tool to really help you find that focus, but it also requires you to really be honest with yourself of, what your capabilities are, what you can get done, and, creating that focus will really help you, I think, get there, but it'll take a couple of times, right? Because this is a new approach for a lot of people, because we all feel like our capacity is limitless in a way, because we're being asked to do so many things. And it's a hard thing to say, you know what, I gotta set my limit right here. I gotta set my boundary here. So it is going to take a little bit, I think, for people to kind of try that for themselves and advocate and set those boundaries for themselves. But what they'll find, though, too, is they'll get more done because they have created that focus for themselves.
So if I have 12 things that are in my important quadrant that I want to work on, is my WIP limit 12? Like, is that how I find my WIP limit?
Well, I think you're going to have to experiment with that, right? Because you may, there may be things going on outside of your control, like that week. Maybe it's performance reviews are due or something, or it's, you're wrapping up the monthly budgeting or something. So there's things that may fall outside of like your normal WIP limit that you may have established that you're going to have to tweak and accommodate. And so the WIP limit does take time to figure out over time, but it also needs to be flexible to the demands that may be happening in a given time that maybe aren't something that you normally would see. You also have to account for if you're sick, or if there are people that are on vacation you have to cover for. I mean, it is just something that you have to just really monitor and be close to, but also be willing to flex on as well. As you continue to learn about, what your true limits are and what your boundaries are and what you're capable of delivering.
And most of us shouldn't be getting anywhere near a 12, right? Like you need to be pushing that way down to single digits for sure. I try to do this myself. It's really challenging. Like you said, when you think you've got a plan and then it's, oh, I forgot budgets are due before the end of the week. And now this has thrown a wrench into it. But even at that point, right, the budget or the performance review becomes another item, right? It's impacting the number of things you can work on. I try really hard. I don't always hold myself to the same standard, but 2 is my like max of things. And so if I've got 2 things in progress and then it's, oh, this is due by the end of the day and I forgot about it, you got to stop one of the things, right? You have to pull it out and say, deliberate pause on that work so that I can focus on this other thing. And then when it's done, I'm going to move on to the next item. But it's a totally different approach to work as opposed to, all right, in my hour of productive time, like our person who asked our question, I have an hour to work today. If I'm trying to split that up across my 12 top priorities, nothing is really moving. But if I could focus on 1 or 2 things in that hour, I might actually get them over the finish line in a day or 2. So it's the smaller your working time, I think, the more critical those focus tools become.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it is, to your point, it is so different, right? I mean, I've been around a while, and I've been rewarded for, oh, Ryan's got a lot of capacity. Ryan can take on a lot of stuff. And I like had this perverse pride about it. And this multitasking, this context switching, that where the reward system is just completely flawed, because it rewards a really toxic behavior that ends up not delivering on the progress that you're trying to make, because you have so many balls in the air. And so, you actually, and we talk about this in Agile Marketing Fundamentals training, and there are studies about this. Like, the more that you can focus on a couple of things, 2, 3 at the most, the more productive you actually are, rather than trying to juggle 10 or 12 things. But it's such a, again, it's something you have to unlearn, not to quote Yoda from Empire Strikes Back, but yeah, you got to unlearn before you can learn this. And so you have to really make a huge shift in your mind of how you need to think about your work. And what I love about Agile is that it really, it helps you make that leap, because it is so incredibly different than the traditional ways of working that we've been not only working in, but rewarded by. That really, I think, Agile can help remedy that, ultimately leading, though, to greater productivity, improved results, and greater value to the organization, as well as happier people, satisfied people.
Well, I really appreciate your time today, Ryan. This has been really fun to dig into some individual practices, right? If you're feeling stretched too thin and like you never have time to work, these are things that can help. And if you have other questions, comment on the video or wherever you're finding this on social media, and we will get to your questions, because that's what Ask an Agile Coach is all about.